Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for whoever is tuning into this video. It is approximately 9:30 Monday morning, June 10th. I'm coming to you from the Great Olympic Peninsula out here in La Push, Washington. It's been about a month since I've posted any videos. I was about ready to do a workout and thought I might as well post one, come at you guys with the story. Before I share the story, I'd like to let you know that this past month I've celebrated 10 months of sobriety. I have celebrated a birthday, and I started a new job. But yeah, so there's been a lot going on. I've been super busy, but I'm gonna give you guys a story. I hope a lot of you guys don't come at me for the story that I'm about to share. A lot of you guys might just find this to be absolutely horrible, like I don't have a heart or anything like that, but it's not like that. So about 5-6 years ago, I think it was right before I got into sobriety, my first go around in sobriety, I was logging for an outfit, not in Forks, but from Port Angeles. And anyways, I was logging under a yoder, and for you that don't know what a yoder is, go look it up online. A co-worker and myself would have to string the skyline straight from the yoder, down across canyons or through flats, or whatever terrain that we had to string it through. And it's 9/16 line, and after every foot gains weight, and it is a struggle at times, I'm not gonna lie. And on this particular day, we had strung to the bottom of the drum, which I believe it holds about 1,800 feet, and we strung down through this canyon and up the other side. And at one point I had to take the knob and the bell of it. There's a knob and there's a bell on there. The bell runs up and down the line, and the knob is what goes into the bell, so you can literally wrap it around anything that you want. And I would have to take that bell, and I'd have to at times, and in this day in particular, I had to take the bell, or I had to choke myself around the waist just to pull myself up the other side of that draw. And anyways, we had gotten up, I had found a tailhole, cleared the skyline up, and instead of going back down across that roughed up terrain, I got on the radio. We had radio pouches that would snap on. They were kind of like if you were to have a baby and you have those little baby deals and your little baby can sit on you. They were kind of like that, but they held our radio. And I had gotten on the radio and told the yarder operator, I said, hey, there's a road up behind us. I said, why don't you come drive around and pick us up? So he's like, all right. So me and this other guy and I decided to hike up to that road, and we had gotten up there, and finally the crew bus had come and it had picked us up. Well, we were on our way back to the landing, and it was like 5 miles, 6 miles, and we were on the main line driving along, and the guy that was driving the crew bus was like, hey, he goes, what the heck was that? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, there was something standing right on the edge of the road, and it just disappeared. So I told him, well, I said, drive up there. I said, about where you seen it? I said, stop and I'll get out. So we pull up there, and he stops, and I kick the crew bus door open, and I jump out, and I run down through the ditch, and I come up on this berm, and it's just wide open fir trees with scattered out deer ferns all over. And I was looking, and I wasn't seeing anything, and all of a sudden, about 5 feet from me, this bobcat jumps up out of the sword ferns. I was like, holy smokes. I mean, I literally stepped on it. And it jumps up out of the sword ferns, and it takes off running, and it was actually parallel in the road. And I yelled up at the other guy that was in the crew bus. I was like, hey, so-and-so. I said, get out, it's a bobcat. So he had gotten out of the crew bus. And I told him, I said, run down to that culvert, because a lot of times bobcats or coyotes, they'll run, and they'll run up a culvert and they'll hide. So I was running, I was chasing it, and then the other guy had gotten out of the crew bus, and he was running down the road, and right before I had got into that culvert, he had thrown a rock at it, Well, when he had thrown the rock at it, it had turned the cat and it started to run down the creek. And the creek was dried up. It was the first, I want to say it was like mid-September. All this is legit. I had hunting licenses and stuff, so it's not like this was poached or anything like that. So the cat took off running down the creek, and I had reached down and grabbed a tree branch that was probably about that long, about that big around, and I grabbed a hold of it and I thrown it at that cat. Well, I had hit it in the hindquarters and it spun it around, and it did a complete 360 and then just kept going right down the creek. And the more that I looked at the cat, I was like, man, there's something wrong with that cat. Like, I can catch that cat. So I took off as fast as I could run. I was running down that creek bed, and it ended up, the creek come down and it made a big corner, and the cat kept going around the corner and then it disappeared. And then when I'd gotten up to that corner, it kind of made another corner and then kind of straightened out. Well, when I had made that corner, I was looking around. There was like 3 ridges that come together right there. And I was looking around, and from the time that I lost sight of that cat to the time that I come around that corner, I knew that it had to be right there because I could not see it on any of the ridges. So I just kept kind of walking down the creek, and there was an old 21 blowdown tree that was laid right down that creek. And when I say a 21 blow, back in 1921, Western Washington got hit with hurricane winds, and it knocked down like 80% of the timber. I believe it was 80% of the timber around here. And there's still, a lot of those logs that are still laying around here to this day. So anyways, that log was laid down the creek, and I was walking along it, and I thought, that cat's got to be under this log. And I walked and I walked and I walked, because this was a long tree, and it started to get elevated off the ground. And I remember I just kind of took a couple steps back, and I was looking down, and there it was. It was laid up underneath that log, and its ears were all tucked back, and it was just hissing at me. And I'd gotten on the radio, and I was like, I told the guy that was with me, I said, hey, I said, come down the creek. I said, I got this cat cornered. So he's like, okay. And I said, hey, I said, make sure that you come down the left-hand side of the creek, and stay high on the ridge. So he was like, all right. So about 5 minutes later, he come down the ridge, and I told him, I told him, all right, I said, this is the deal. I said, I got this cat that's underneath this log right here. I said, I'm going to throw a rock at it, and if it comes out on your side of the log, I said, you throw a rock at it. So he was like, okay. So I had picked up a rock about the size of a baseball, and I had to throw it like Randy Johnson would throw his fastball, sidearm, because it was, the log was only about 2.5, 3 feet off the ground. And once I did that, I had thrown it sidearm, and I hit the bottom of the log, and it shot the rock down, and it hit right in front of that cat, and it just completely pepper sprayed it with sand off the creek bed. And the cat jumped out from the other side of the log and jumped up on the bank. And when it jumped up on the bank, it was literally right at that guy's feet. He could have kicked it, but he just kind of panicked and backstepped, and he threw a rock at it and missed it, and the cat had turned and jumped off that embankment back onto the log that it was underneath. Well, when it had done this, I had a rock in my hand, and I had thrown a rock at it. Well, I just barely missed it, and when I missed it, the cat watched the rock, so it just turned with the rock, and it completely spun it around, and it was facing the other guy. So then he threw a rock at it, and he had missed it. Well, it had did the same thing. When he'd thrown the rock, it just watched the rock, and it pivoted and spun around on that log, and then it was looking at me. Luckily, he didn't hit me with the rock. If I can remember right, it went by me by just a couple feet. So anyways, when the cat spun around again, I was already in mid-throw, and it was a baseball-sized rock, and I threw it as hard as I could throw, and I hit that cat right on the end of the nose, and it fell over backwards off that log. Well, I told Philly, I was like, hey man, I got it. and I had jumped up on that log and I looked down the back side of it, and its front legs were, the back legs were stiff and the front legs were kind of bent. And I remember I looked down there and I had grabbed a hold of the back legs because they were stiff, and I picked it up out of that hole, and I was like, holy smokes. And I had jumped off that log, and this is where it gets insane. You know, I get off that log and all of a sudden I'm holding that bobcat and it comes alive in my hands. It wasn't dead. I had knocked it out with that rock. And when it had come alive in my hands, I let go, and it had hit the ground, and it instantly like grabbed around my leg and my boob. And so picture this, I'm standing in this creek bed. I got this cat that I just knocked out with a rock. It had come alive in my hands. I had dropped it, and then it just wraps itself up around my legs. So I'm trying to, I'm hopping around on this creek bed, and this cat's attached to me, and eventually it lets go, and I just start laying the boots to it. You know, yeah, it was pretty intense. I laid the boots to it till I had killed it. You know. Philly, that was with me, he grew up on the streets of Philadelphia, and he was like, that is the most crazy thing I have ever seen. You know, he's like, you're a flippin' savage. You know, for one, to chase that cat down and literally corner it, and then to hit it with a rock, knock it out, and then literally beat it, you know, stomp it to death. You know, so after I'd killed the cat, I'd thrown it over my shoulders, proceeded to go up to the crew bus. I had gotten up there. I'd opened up the crew bus door, and the crew bus driver, I just held it up, and he's like, what the heck? He's like, how'd you kill it? And I told him, you know, I hit it with a rock, it knocked it out, it had come alive, and I had to kill it with basically my bare hands. I did. I killed it with my bare hands, you know. I don't think there's anybody else out here that can actually say that they killed a bobcat with their bare hands. So we had thrown it in the back of the crew bus. We had drove to the landing, and when we had pulled up to the landing, I had gotten on the CB, and I was like, hey boys, check this out. And all the boys, you know, the shovel operator turned around, the yard engineer, the yard engineer, because Mike was running the process. So anyways, the yard engineer, he opened up his window and he was looking out there, and I got in back the crew bus and I held up that bobcat. And the shovel operator's like, what? He's like, how did you guys get that? He's like, did you guys run it over in the crew bus? Because he knew we didn't have no guns in the crew bus. And the guy that was driving the crew bus was like, no. He's like, you won't believe it. He's like, Henshin ran it down and killed it with a rock. And they were like, no way. They were like, he was like, no, yeah, really, like, that's what happened. And I proceeded to tell the story to the boys to let them know, you know, exactly what took place, and they were all just flabbergasted, you know, as was I. I mean, I've never thought in a million years that I could, you know, that like something that would have happened, you know. Do I feel bad for doing it? Yes and no, you know. I later on took it to a old hound hunter that used to hound hunt for cougars and bobcats around here, and I told him, you know, I shared the story with him, and I told him, I said, when I'd seen it running, I said, I knew there was something wrong with it. And we kind of checked it out, and come to find out it had a dislocated hip. So as bad as it sounds, I kind of did that cat a favor. You know, like he was saying that cat didn't have long to live because it basically could not hunt for itself. He said that basically if another cat, Tom, would have come around, you know, it would have killed it. You know, it was. So I kind of feel like I had done that cat a favor. But anywho, I'm already 14.5 minutes deep into this video. It'd been a while since I posted one, so I figured I'd come at you guys with that bobcat story. Don't hate, please don't come at me. You know, like, I can't live in the past, I can't live in the future, I gotta live in the present, and I thought that I would share that story with you because it's absolutely off the wall. One crazy experience, and it is as real as it gets, you know. How many of you can say that you killed a bobcat with your bare hands? I don't think there's very many people that can, if there's any besides myself, you know. So, anyways, with that said, remember, always do what makes you happy. Don't worry about what other people think or say about you, because in the end, they don't matter. You matter. With that amount, y'all take care and God bless. Hoi.